how many Illinois fit in Libya? So, there's lots of ways of doing this, but I think we're not going to be able to get around one key fact, which is that even though it looks like they're about the same size, the scale factor that's at the bottom or the left of each drives a lot of what we need to look at. So let's look at the scale. It says 0 to 400 kilometers or 0 to 250 miles, and on the Illinois one it might be hard to read, but this is 0, 25, 50, 75, and 100 miles. So I could pull out a ruler, and because I'm zoomed in, the scale I'm going to use might be different than the scale you're going to use. But for example, 1 inch here on Illinois, 1 inch is the same as 100 miles. And on the map here, 1 inch is 250 miles. So we need to use that at some point to figure this out. But one of the interesting things is, okay, so how do I divide this up? Right, because this, I could, I suppose, do a, let me get a different color so we can see this better. I could do a rectangle. But you might notice that it includes some of Chad, some of Algeria, some of Niger, some of the ocean. And so using that rectangle might be an approximation that we could use, but we could probably do better. So another choice, I guess, is, well, what if I cut off some of the country and I try to cut off about the same amount that I added in somewhere else? Well, that is a strategy. You could do that. Again, you're using some estimations, but you're saying the part I'm cutting off is about the same that I've added for other countries. And so let's look at that. Looking at that, possibly. So that's about 2 3/4 inches on this dimension, 2 3/4 inches. And on the width, 3 3/4 inches. And so let's just see if we can make some sense of what that means. So the area is base times height in a rectangle, I guess length times width. And so 3.75 times 2.75 gives me 10.3125 square inches. But I know there's a conversion factor. 1 inch is 250 miles. So how am I going to use that? Well, one thing to think about is if 1 inch is 250 miles, how many miles in 10.3125 inches squared? So you notice I have a unit issue here. I won't be able to just cross multiply because I'll have inches times miles is equal to inches squared times miles. So somehow I have to figure out how many square inches or how many square miles in a square inch. Well, if this is 1 inch and 1 inch, that's the same as saying this is 250 miles and 250 miles on some portion of the grid. So the area of this is in fact 1 square inch. Let me write that in blue. 1 square inch. But it is also 250 squared miles squared. So the idea is that the scale factor in area is scale factor squared. So if I square everything here, that will give me scale factor squared. And that's good because I'm actually looking for miles squared anyway, square miles. So rewriting this, 1 square inch over 250 squared is 62500 miles squared. So then if I have 10.3125 square inches, how many square miles? This I can solve. Now that my units match, I cross multiply. So that number times 10.3125 is equal to x. So then this tells me it's 644,531 square miles. So that's one method I could have used. I could have used other methods. Maybe let's try another method on Illinois and see what that tells us. So Illinois, 1 inch is 100 miles, and so I'm going to try to figure out how many square inches this is, and I can use a conversion again. Another way to think of this, this shape's a little different, but maybe I think of this in a set of different shapes. Perhaps I look at it, this is a trapezoid. I have a rectangle here. I have a triangle here. Lots of ways of dividing it. And I'll notice I included a little too little, so maybe I seep into pushing here to get a little too much, so I can count for the parts that I've cut out. So this I can account for in a couple ways. That trapezoid is looking a little ill because these lines are not looking parallel. That looks a little better. So to find the area of this rectangle, I just need to measure. So I have 3 1/8 by 1 1/2 inches. So then the area of the rectangle, 4.6875 inches squared. Now to find it for my triangle, I need the height and the base, and then I divide by 2 and multiply by half. Same thing. So that's 1 1/4 inches. The height, about 1 inch. So the area there would be 1 1/4 inches squared. Finally, my trapezoid, I have to average my bases. So this base is about 1 1/4. This base is about 2 1/4. So the average of those, 1.75 times the height, about 5/8 of an inch. So then I get this to be 1.09 inches squared. So I add that all up, and I get, let's see, plus 4.6875 plus 1.25, 7.03. So this is 7.03125 square inches is how many square miles? If I know that 1 square inch is 62500 square miles. So I can again solve this proportion, and I get 439,453 square miles. So looks like not that far off. Now the question is, well, what's the real answer, and where could I have error in my solution? So let's look for the real answer. Libya I thought was 644,000. It's actually 679,000. according to Google. So it seems like I was short some. Well, you might say, well, I cut out more than I added. That's a possibility in that method. Illinois, I thought 439,000. Let's see what Illinois is. 57,000. So what did I do? I misused my scale. It was only 100 miles. So I had different scales. So I need to do 100 square miles here. And so let's resolve. So I need to do 7.03125 times 100 squared. 70,000. 312. So now, again, looking at the real one, is 50,000. So I overestimated Illinois. Well, you might see that, okay, well, the rectangle was probably bigger than anything I cut out. So the question still remains, how many fit in? Well, using my numbers here, I would take the number, the area of Libya and divide it by the area of Illinois, and that would tell me how many Illinois go into Libya. So 644,531 divided by, that answers 9.17 is what I would have come up with. And if you look at the real figures, take 679,362 and divide it by 57,915. It's about 11.7. So definitely some error there, but you get the idea. That scale is important, and that there are different methods of cutting this up. And ultimately, using scale factor helps you figure out square miles, but scale factor squared gives you area, and you'd find scale factor cubed gives you volume. So if I was looking for cubic miles, I'd have to cube each of my scale factors.